And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, your Indiana Hoosiers beat the Minnesota Golden Gophers by a final score of 82-72 in a game that lasted quite some time and featured a lot of runs on both sides. But it was really IU who was able to reel off the biggest run of the game. I think an 18-2 run by my count in the second half to put themselves up by I think 14 was the most that it got. But it was really a back and forth game for most of it. IU didn't get off to as slow of a start as we have become accustomed to in over the course of the season and in recent games. The lull did come kind of midway through the first half and then again toward the end, and they went into the locker room trailing by 2. Really struggled to keep Minnesota's guards in front of them and out of the lane. But that defense got better as the game went along, and IU got contributions from a number of different players with 5 guys in double figures in total, and what ended up being a solid balanced effort with some timely three-point shooting from a number of players and a double-double from Trayce Jackson-Davis to propel them to the victory. They are now 12-9 on the season and 7-7 in the Big Ten. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms, and I'm here with Ryan Phillips and Jerod Morris, and we'll break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. And let's start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. I wrote down a few over the course of the game, and so there probably could be some debate here. But for me, it was really that run. Minnesota IU had a run where Jerome Hunter hit a couple threes, put IU up 6. Minnesota battled back to take a 2-point lead. It was 55-53. IU then ripped off an 18-2 run, eventually getting up 71-57. That run featured back-to-back threes from Al Durham and Armand Franklin in a game that featured a few different instances of IU hitting back-to-back three-pointers. And overall, in a 12-possession stretch, IU scored on 10 of them. Trayce had a dunk. Rob had a great drive. Trayce hit free throws. Armand hit some free throws. Jerome had a layup and a dunk. It was just a somewhat emblematic of the whole game in that stretch where IU got contributions from a number of different players and played arguably their best stretch of defense, although that was aided, I think, in some ways by Minnesota settling for three-pointers. But that run was really what clinched it for IU. They did have a few issues with the pressure late in the game, again, as we have probably become all too accustomed to, where no lead feels safe, but IU holds on, ends up winning the game by 10. But that run, that 18-2 run that started at the 8:35 mark of the second half was the banner moment for me tonight. And our banner moment, as always, is brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, who are now in their 4th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call. And with frigid temperatures overtaking the entire country, including Jerod in Dallas, you really shouldn't be wearing anything other than super soft hoodies and crew necks. So you need to make your way over to their website at homefieldapparel.com. They have something unique for everyone, especially IU fans, and all of their apparel is printed on the softest, warmest, most comfortable, and most washable materials you'll find anywhere. If you need a few suggestions, the IU gear is always great. I've been wearing the Bison, not the Bison hoodie, but the football design with the Bison also on it in the crew neck quite a bit over the winter, as it apparently I've moved back to Cleveland and the ground has been covered with snow for the better part of the week here in Cincinnati. But they do have more than just IU gear. Home Field has apparel from more than 90 different colleges and universities. They added, I think, some shirts from Hampton today, and new ones are being added all the time. Their designs are so unique, interesting, and vintage that you may end up like Coach or I buying shirts and hoodies for schools you barely heard of just because you like the designs. And you can always save on your Home Field order by using the promo code Assembly20 at checkout. It'll give you 20% off your entire order throughout the year. So go to homefieldapparel.com, load up your shopping cart, and enter Assembly20 at checkout to get 20% off. That's homefieldapparel.com. All right, it's time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. I'm going to throw it to Jerod Morris first, who is joining us while he has power. Hopefully, in the midst of me reading the ad, I won't find that he has lost power and fallen off of the broadcast. Looks like you're still there, so Jerod, I'll throw it to you first.
Still here right now, but my line could go dark at any moment. You know, narratives are funny things, because they're true until they're not. And I think what we're seeing really unfold with this Indiana team as we go down the stretch here is that the narrative of a defense-first, defense-dominated team that really struggles on offense is starting to get flipped on its head a little bit, because right now this team is better offensively than they are defensively. And right now, one of this team's best strengths is its outside shooting. Indiana went 7 of 12 from 3-point range tonight, and that moved Indiana into the top 100 in the country in 3-point shooting. This team is 4th in the conference right now, shooting threes, making 36.1% of their threes. And Andy, you talked about, when Indiana looked its best, things really got going when they took threes. They had a couple stretches there where they hit 2 or 3 3-pointers in a row, and that really got things going. And I think it's, time for, this team to start considering maybe they need to take more. When you take 12 and you make 7, that's a really good percentage, but you might want to think about taking some more of them, because right now, I think defensively, this team, we know that they can be good defensively, and they've shown some flashes of being good defensively, but Indiana's 11th in the conference right now in defensive efficiency. That's not very good. And they weren't very good defensively tonight. Fortunately, Gabe Kalsher was out. Fortunately, Bo Robbins was injured, and Minnesota wasn't able to take full advantage of it. But this was a game where Indiana's offense really keyed things. And I think we're starting to see a guy like Al Durham become more confident shooting from 3 again. Jerome Hunter has come back from his suspension and been shooting absolutely lights out and really giving Indiana some big moments off the bench. And so, what is this team's strength right now? What do they do best? I think, we thought as we got into mid-February, it would really be the defense driving things. Where would the offense be? Right now, this team is better, as I said, better offensively than they are defensively. And I think, if for this team to do as well as they can do down the stretch now with 4 games remaining, I think it's time to start upping the volume of threes, because that's the one thing kind of holding them back. They're shooting a high percentage, but they're dead last in the conference in the amount of threes that they take. And maybe that's a tweak, that they need to make offensively that can help the efficiency some, because they've got guys who are knocking them down. Now I think it's time to start letting them shoot some more.
All right, Ryan, what's your rant on the game tonight?
Well, I think Jerod touched on it. I think Jerome Hunter was fantastic tonight. He was really, really good. And so I think I have to point that out. 5 of 6 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3. He went 4 of 5 from the free throw line when he's shooting like 40% on the year, and he hit 4 of 5, and the one he missed, rattled in and out. But I think we have to talk about the first half and the defense. And Jerod pointed to this, where they're better offensively than they are defensively right now. They were just giving up straight line drives to the basket all night, it seemed like, until about the 7-minute mark left to go in the game, when something tightened up. And I don't know if it was Minnesota tightening up or if Indiana's defense just got better. There was no rim protection from the big guys, and the guards were just leaving driving lanes open. Al Durham was horrific defensively for the first 2/3 of this game, and just leaving guys a whole lot of room to drive right by him. And I know that Indiana was probably overplaying the 3-point line because Minnesota takes more threes than anyone in the Big Ten. They also shoot a lower percentage than anyone in the Big Ten. I believe they're last place coming into this game, or they're close. And so I get that the defensive game plan was probably, hey, don't let him get comfortable from 3. But at the same time, you can close out to a guy and you can play close to him and not just give him a wide open driving lane. So that was the issue I had. Now, look, the later part of the second half, Indiana locked down and played much better. And again, offensively, as Jerod said, they played very well in this game. And it's amazing how easy basketball looks when you A, make 3-pointers, and B, make over 75% of your free throws. It's amazing how easy offense is in those situations. They were 23 of 30 from the free throw line, 76.7%. And there were a couple that they shot that were, good free throws that rattled in and out. That happens sometimes. You're going to have those in a game. You see guys who shoot 90% miss occasionally. But to be at that level, and then also to hit 7 of 12 from 3, those points give you, it's a bonus. I mean, those are extra points you can earn. And Jerod's right. I think at some point with guys like Durham, who's been over 50% over the last few games, Hunter is shooting with incredible confidence right now. Franklin was 3 of 3. They've got to take more, and they've got to run plays to get them to take more, because guess what that's going to do? It's going to open things up for Trayce Jackson-Davis on the inside. It's going to open things for Race Thompson on the inside, and it's going to open driving lanes for other guys. If Franklin has to be guarded out on the 3-point line closely, it's going to give him room when he's healthy enough to be able to burst off that ankle. It's going to give him room to take the ball to the hoop as well. So I agree with Jerod, and we don't get to say that much on this show, but I agree with Jerod. They need to take more threes which is something I didn't think I'd be saying about Indiana this year, but lately their percentage is up. Now, here's the thing. I don't think Christian Lander should be taking more threes. I don't think Trey Galloway should be taking more threes. I think the guys who can hit him should be taking more threes. I think Rob Phinisee should take more. He was 0 of 3 tonight. He should take more when he has the chance. One of the problems is, and we can get into this later, a lot of the guys on this team in the first half were not catching the ball to shoot. They were catching it low on their waist and ready to just move it to the next guy. They have to be ready to shoot every time they catch it on the perimeter. It has to be a threat, and they got to shoot more, quite frankly.
Yeah, so as we think about, the major storylines of this one, I mean, to me, you look at the second half box score. I used 14 of 21 from the floor, 5 of 7 from 3, and 14 of 18 from the line in the second half. They had 10 assists on 14 made baskets after having just 5 assists in the first half. The turnover numbers were not great in either half, quite frankly. 8 in the first, 9 in the second, including a handful down the stretch against the press. But that was really the story, is that IU's offense really got into a rhythm. And as we've seen from this team, and it even happened in the Ohio State game, when the offense would get into a little bit of a groove, the defense would play better. And eventually that proved to be the case. But it just felt to me, Jerod, like the offense just had a better flow to it, better pace. And I think the pace has been a thing that's been a pretty big issue. And there were some stretches where there weren't fouls called every 5 seconds in the second half like there was the first. But, I think that to me was really the story, because the defense let this team down in the first half. They made enough plays. But like I said, I thought Minnesota really settled for some threes when they had guys that could get to the basket, and they bailed out IU a little bit on that end of the floor. But from your perspective, what did you see different in the approach to the game in the second half versus the first on the offensive end?
Well, I think overall, I kind of want to go back to the start of the game. I thought, we've talked a lot about how Indiana has started, and that was a big storyline coming out. And I thought Indiana started out better tonight. And it comes back to what you were talking about with pace. I thought Trayce Jackson-Davis really came out with a better pace. He was making quicker moves when he got the ball. He was being more assertive. And so I thought, that kind of got things started off. But I think where this team struggles a little bit is, when they try to push the pace and play a little bit faster, it also means they're going to turn the ball over a little bit more. And so we turned the ball over 17 times tonight, which is way too much. And yet it still felt like the pace was better. And so, there's going to have to be, something's going to have to balance out here, because Archie really wants to limit the turnovers. And yet it feels like sometimes the guys squeeze the ball so hard trying not to make turnovers that they also don't make plays. And tonight they did turn the ball over, but they also made plays, and were aggressive. I know, Rob Phinisee had 4 turnovers. And yes, some of those need to get cleaned up, but we also saw Rob Phinisee being more aggressive, drive to the basket, creating more space than he usually does. Al Durham had 4 turnovers. Some of those are because, he's doing some things that he probably shouldn't be asked to do, as a primary ball handler.
Doing Al things.
Doing Al things. But, when Al is just, catch and shoot, attacking closeouts, he does a really good job, with that. And so, I think this team, to me, what seems to be happening is this team is kind of trying, their offensive identity is still evolving. I mean, they are still an inside-outside team. And, the bread and butter is still getting it inside to Trayce Jackson-Davis. That was still the focus early on. But, you see now the element that Jerome Hunter brings. And with Al Durham starting to get his shooting back, and the guards kind of starting to be a little bit more aggressive, you're seeing more of a multifaceted offense start to come through. You're just seeing growing pains with it because the turnover numbers are coming up. I'm not sure a little bit higher turnover number is bad for this team, because it's almost like they kind of need that to have the aggressiveness that they need to create some of the open shots, get some of the looks, push it in transition. We saw them pushing it a lot more in transition tonight. So, it's going to be interesting to see, like I said, what happens here over the next few games. But, I just think, and the other thing, getting back, you can't overstate the point that, sometimes there is a difference between playing well and shooting well. And tonight, Indiana did shoot the ball really well. And that does help you overcome, some other issues that you might have. But, this team has now been shooting well from outside for most of Big Ten play. So I think it's encouraging from an offensive standpoint. We can leave the defense, to talk about later, because our defensive identity is waning. But I think it is encouraging that offensively, you're starting to see some of the older guys, find some more consistent ways to score. They don't have to have the freshmen come off the bench and kind of bail them out offensively. And if that can continue, now this team can do some things down the stretch. Because I think we saw how limited things were when things were just driven by the defense. And the defense needs to get better. Don't get me wrong. Like I don't think Indiana played particularly well tonight. Actually, they took care of business. They got a win that they needed. But this is the second closest game Minnesota's played at home without one of their starters and with another guy hobbled. So there were still, yes, on the road. Sorry. Yeah. And, so I think there were still a lot of issues, but I do think seeing the guys play with more offensive pace and confidence and just kind of being okay making mistakes, I think that's related to shots going in. I think those two things are related. And so I think that's something they can potentially build on offensively. They're just going to have to figure out, how do we play at a better pace? How do we be more aggressive and not turn the ball over quite so much? Because against a better team, that would have ended up hurting them.
Guys, I've got breaking news coming in from Crimson Cast. You're going to want to hold on to something. Our friends at Crimson Cast posted that, sit down before you read this, Indiana is in the top 100 in the country in three-point field goal percentage this season.
I literally said that 10 minutes ago.
I know, but I'm confirming it from our friends at Crimson Cast.
Do you know?
You are an unreliable source, Jerod, is what I would say. So
I'm the guy who predicted it before the season started. I'm not.
Sure, you did, and we all thought you were a psycho. But no, I just think that you are right about the turnovers. And when you do play with more pace, especially against a team like Minnesota, where games can get ragged because they're not exactly crisp either. And that tends to sort of bleed over to both teams when things get ragged like that. And Indiana had too many turnovers tonight. It's unacceptable. But at the same time, offensively, they played better. And I'm not saying those two things are necessarily correlated. What made Indiana play better is the fact they shot the ball well. And so I think that you look at those 17 turnovers and you're upset with that performance, especially because 4 of them came from Durham and 4 of them came from Phinisee, your 2 upperclassmen guards who are starting. And, that's not acceptable. And, some of them were Al Durham, throwing a pass at Race Thompson's foot, and things that are just like, come on. But and then there were the stuff late with, not getting the ball up across half court and not handling the pressure late well when you should. If you're an upperclassman, that should be cake to you, and it's not. So I agree. I think that you need to accept more turnovers if you're going to play a more up tempo. But I do think there's still a way to rein that in within the way they played tonight, of course. And they really do need to get better at handling that stuff, especially the older guys. If Christian Lander came in, he had 5 turnovers and was throwing it all over around the gym, you'd say, all right, he's a freshman and he's, not used to playing the Big Ten and all that. But when your upperclassmen are the ones creating the turnovers, and a lot of them are unforced. And that's the real issue with the turnovers.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the more free-flowing nature of the offense, and probably no player more emblematic of that than Jerome Hunter in the stretch in the second half where he hit those couple threes. But that to me is another legitimate positive coming out of this game. Again, we'll talk a bit more later about the defense, but you look at him, he scores 16 points, 3 of 4 on twos, 2 of 2 from 3-point range, 4 of 5 on free throws, did have 3 turnovers, but he just is starting to look like the guy that everybody projected him to be when he came, before the injuries, before the other stuff, playing with confidence. Archie talked earlier in the week about wanting to play him a little bit more at the 3, which didn't happen a ton tonight, because I don't think he would have helped the perimeter defensive issues in that regard. But he's a guy that's just playing with a ton of confidence. Like I said earlier,
free
those back-to-back threes. Yeah, free and easy. I think Archie might want to throw up into a trash can sometimes when he pulls up for some of these shots. But I think somebody tweeted out that he was full Cobra when one of the shots went up. But then, I think Jerome's a guy you got to let shoot the ball. He is one of the guys who doesn't have a conscience on this team. And for a team full of guys who are reticent to shoot far too often, that is not something that you would ever say about him. And I think as you look over his last few games, even the game before, he missed a couple. He had 9 points against Rutgers, comes back at 7 against Northwestern, including the big 3 in the second overtime, and 10 against Ohio State, 16 today. He just is a guy that continues to get better and better, seems to be getting more comfortable in his role, and is the kind of offensive player that could really give IU a shot in the arm down the stretch. Ryan, I know you talked a little bit about him in the open. So Jerod, what are your I feel like you like the freewheeling nature of Jerome's shot selection.
Love it. I always have. You need guys like that. Are we sure he's not Danny Green and Devontae Green's younger brother? Are we positive about that?
Somebody said, I think it was Chronic. Somebody tweeted, I believe it was Chronic, because Crimson Cast was trying to figure out like a comp for him in some way. And Chronic, I believe, tweeted that he was a cross between Troy Williams and Rod Wilmot, which I feel like was pretty accurate, really.
The full Jerome Hunter experience is him knocking down a 3-pointer on 2 straight possessions, and in the defensive possession between them, spending the entire possession with his back turned to the ball.
When it's driving directly at his number.
Followed the cutter through the lane with the ball right behind him. Yeah, that was
Minnesota did not score. Look, this team has to have Jerome Hunter's swagger. Like they do. Like part of this team, reaching its potential, I think we talked about it all offseason, is down the stretch. There were 2 things that if they happened, this team could be really good. One of them was Christian Lander coming along. That's been a little bit up and down. The other one was Jerome Hunter being the guy that we thought he could be. Now, he was really struggling before he got suspended. And since he came back, whatever happened, he seems to have his head screwed on a little bit straighter. It may never be fully straight because I think he's always going to make mistakes. He's going to do some of those things. But sometimes you just have to have a guy that doesn't give a crap and is going to take shots. And that's what Jerome is. That's what he does. And he's confident when he takes them. And I think he has reined his shot selection in some. He's not taking as many of the crazy ones. But when he takes an outside shot, you think it's going in. Right? Am I right? I mean, he's shooting 41.2% now.
He thinks it's going in for sure.
He does. Well, you know what? And he gives everybody else confidence. But he's also a guy who can score in some different ways. And he shows that. I think he's a guy that they're kind of putting in some screen and roll situations. He's becoming a guy that's making some better passes. He is a really well-rounded offensive player, one of the most well-rounded offensive players that this team has. And, look, he's not always going to score 16 points in 19 minutes and make 4 or 5, free throws again. This was kind of one of those games where you had a lot of guys shoot well, and everything is going to look a little bit better when a lot of guys shoot well. But if he can give you 18 to 24 minutes and come out there and be a double-digit type scorer, that is huge for this team. I mean, that's what was missing in some of Indiana's close losses earlier this season, was him being able to come in and be a reliable source of points. And we're seeing that from him now. And I think his confidence helps rub off on other guys. Like, he has an impact. He had an impact in that Ohio State game. He rescued Indiana in the first half and made that first half moderately competitive by the end of the half. Because he just came in and was like, screw this, I'm just going to go make some plays. And sometimes this team just really needs that. And so I think we saw that tonight, and he's a guy who can lift the ceiling for what this team is capable of. Because I think the 3 most talented offensive players that this team has are Trayce Jackson-Davis, Jerome Hunter, and Christian Lander. Talent. Now, those aren't the guys you're going to bank on from game to game, but just straight up talent. And so if you can get Hunter doing this game in, game out, that's really, really big. And hat tip to him, because he was huge tonight. They may not win this game without him coming in and making the impact that he did.
Well, you talk about the 3 most talented guys. You look at Trayce, you look at Lander, and you look at Hunter. Those are also 3 of the highest recruited guys.
Sure.
On the run. You know what I mean? So it translates. What you're saying is not crazy. It translates. I mean, and you have to remember, Hunter missed that whole year. Maybe this would have been last year for him or something. I mean, his development, you can't track his development as to somebody else because he took an entire year where he didn't play basketball. But look at tonight, 19 minutes, 16 points. He can do that. He is explosive offensively. And we're talking about the 3-point shots, but he also had a really tough layup where he got fouled, where he shot it over a guy, over a defender. He had one where he came in the inside and finished close in on what looked like, kind of caught it and did a little reverse. And he had another one where he dunked it home. It was Indiana's last field goal with about 2 minutes left, two something left. 2:26 it says. So he can score in a variety of ways too. I know the threes are what stand out because when he's hot from 3, it changes the game for Indiana. And nobody loves a pick and pop like Jerome Hunter. I've never seen anything like it. That guy never rolls, never at all rolls. He pops every single time, and he kind of does that slip screen every time. He doesn't stay, and he's nope, I'm getting the ball. Like you are.
That's why, as Mark Titus would say, he is an X factor, not a glue guy.
Exactly. And he shout out to Mark. But what I'll say about Jerome is also he's one of the few guys that shows incredible emotion on the court. When he's playing well, that dude has a huge grin on his face and he's excited and he's clapping his hands. A lot of these guys, it's almost like they make a play, and I don't know if they're trying to be stone-faced or whatever, but Al will smile sometimes when he makes a big shot. But a lot of the other guys, it almost feels like they're really clenched when they do something good. Trayce will blow up on an and one and all that, but consistently, when he makes a nice play, Hunter is happy. And he is playing with some joy when things go well. And that's big for this team. These guys just need to relax sometimes. And I feel like our tightness gets in the way late. And guys clench up and aren't playing free. And that's what's caused some losses. They do what happened at the end of the game tonight, which is, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to make a mistake. Oh, dang it, I just made a mistake. You know, like, you can't play like that. You have to play with confidence. And I just think that with confidence comes good decision-making as well, because you don't question a pass when you're throwing it. You just throw the pass, and the pass gets there faster, and it has more oomph behind it. And it's just, I think that's a huge part of what's going on with this team, and they need guys who just play free and easy and look like they're having fun out there, because I think that rubs off on the rest of the team. And if you noticed, when Jerome hit that second three, the whole team came out to greet him. You know, they were all excited for him as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought Jerome's the flagrant that he picked up in the first half was
terrible.
A number of comical calls there. But yeah, I think, well, you look at what he does, and we talk about the floor spacing and everything with this team. When he's out there playing the four or even the three, and you've got Armaan and Al making shots tonight, it makes it a lot easier on everybody to do well. And it's great to see him rounding into form, and hopefully he can keep it up. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we are going to talk about some meaningful moments that you might have missed, and then we'll head inside the numbers to look at some meaningful statistical notes from the game tonight after IU's 82-72 win over Minnesota. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hi, this is AJ Moye. What's the only thing better than upsetting Duke in the Sweet 16? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach for the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
And welcome back to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Jerod Morris and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down IU's 82-72 home win over Minnesota. And it's time for
meaningful moments that you might have missed.
All right, there are a number of these on here, so I guess we'll go back. Maybe I'll do these in chronological order. So, Jerod, you touched a little bit on early in the game, and the fact that the start was better for IU. One of the things that Archie Miller had talked about was that Trayce was missing shots early in the game. So they set up a lob for a dunk on the first play of the game that was, I guess, a more high percentage shot. But I thought overall Trayce was really involved early, scored 6 points on the first, I believe the first 5 possessions. IU had a dunk in there, had another nice layup, which was one of the other moments where, Rob Phinisee gets a piece of Marcus Carr's shot. Trayce runs the floor, really took advantage of the fact that Liam Robbins was not moving very well over the course of the game, got fouled and put it in. He did miss the free throw, but I thought Trayce's involvement early really set the tone and was something that has been much discussed in IU basketball circles in terms of both the team and Trayce starting slow. They even had some horrific shooting numbers of what his early game shooting had been there. But Ryan, your thoughts on TJD's approach coming out today, maybe different than what we've seen in some of these other games?
Yeah, I thought he was much more focused, and I thought his energy was much more focused. I feel like sometimes he puts too much energy into making the move and not enough into the finish, and I felt like it was more even when he was around the basket tonight. And because there have been a lot of times where he puts a lot of work into shoulder shake and maybe try and get open, but then kind of flips the shot up instead of attacking the rim. And I thought he attacked the rim tonight. And I think that maybe the idea that his defender might have been hurt, probably had him in a good place mentally going into the game, thinking like, hey, I put moves on this guy, he's not gonna be able to stay with me. Well, I thought Robbins looked pretty good moving around. If you hadn't told me that he had an ankle injury, I wouldn't have known. So I think TJD really actually just outplayed him. But I think that lob was really smart off the front. Get him feeling good about his game, because we can see from time to time that Trayce's just sort of confidence kind of drops early in games, and maybe it takes a halftime speech to get him back up. But you could just see some games the shoulders come down a little, and then when that happens, he tries to do too much. He tries winging the ball off the backboard. He tries rolling right into guys and trying to get fouled to get himself going. That was a really smart play. They won't be able to do it again because people are gonna guard that right off the bat next time. But maybe you use that to open up something else because they're going to overplay the lob. But I just think it was a smart way to get him going. What they've been doing to get him going is reverse the ball and have him roll off, block to block screen and roll off. And he's got his guy pinned, but then he's still got to beat a guy. This was easy. It was over the top by himself. And so I think it was really smart. And I really do think that got him settled on the right path. And we've seen before with other guys, Rob Phinisee is one of them. Rob Phinisee hits a 3 in the first 5 possessions, he's going to have a good game. We've seen that before. We saw that last year a few times, and you saw it this year a few times. So it is smart to get guys going and get their confidence going, but they got to find ways to do that. And this has to be, it can't be a 1-game thing. They got to go to him early in a way that gets him isolated with an easy score. Maybe next time they run that lob play for Race Thompson and have TJD cut to the other block off of it or something, but they do have to get him going early. It's a key to the whole thing, because if our guards don't play well in the beginning, he's the only guy that keeps us in games for long stretches.
Andy, I got to jump in here, and I have to give a shout out to Max in our private discussion community. I put out a question earlier today, what should Indiana do to kind of fix these poor starts? Max's response was a simpler option. Have Rob throw a lob to TJD on the first play of the game. Either it works and Trayce thunders down a dunk and gets the blood flowing, or it doesn't work and the result is really no different than any other early game play that we've run lately. Max, congratulations to you. That's exactly what happened. But to Ryan's point, it wasn't just the play. I thought the quick spin move that Trayce made was as indicative as anything of, hey, I'm here to kick some butt tonight and to move quickly and not overthink every single post move.
Let's
and
be
the other
real.
one,
He's heard people talking. He's
Sure.
he's not
You
immune
could tell.
to that.
I know, you could tell. And he came out with a different mindset. And I'll tell you, Andy, the other moment from him that really stood out to me is easy to forget this now. Early in the second half, Minnesota opened up a 6-point lead because Indiana did not play very well out of the gates. And I thought Trayce really just basically created 2 buckets by running his butt off in transition and scored 2 straight baskets that got it back to a 2-point game. And I think they were really important because it's one of those like, hey, look, all right, not a good start to the half. They've got the 6-point lead. Let me go out and do something. And it wasn't a great post. He just hustled. And his teammates found him. I think one was a nice pass by Armand. I don't remember what happened on the other one. But I thought those were really big. And then soon after that is when I think Indiana had a couple of those 3-point barrages that pushed the lead out. But I thought the way that Trayce started the game and the way that he responded at the start of the second half, that's what leaders do. I think sometimes there are games where Trayce will score, like the Ohio State game. He scored 23 points, and if you told me he scored 10, I would have believed it. Tonight, I felt like he scored more than 20 points because I thought the points that he scored were really important. They came at important times of the game where Indiana either needed to get momentum going at the start or they needed to change the momentum in the second half. That's what we've been looking for from him. He didn't have to do as much heavy lifting offensively tonight because other guys shot well, but I thought he really picked his spots and was good in moments when Indiana really needed him to be.
Yeah, I was going to mention that what you said. They were coming off of back-to-back turnovers toward the beginning of the second half. He scored 2 straight buckets, and then even when they were down, he scored 55 to 53. He scored the first points that tied back up. Scored inside the first 2 points of that 18-2 run. So yeah, you're right. Timely baskets to kind of stem the tide for them. The other moment that I wanted to talk about was probably a couple different ones from Rob Phinisee in the second half. One was toward the beginning of the second half on the second possession. He had a nice drive, pulled up, did a shot fake, let the guy fly by him, banked in a nice shot. And then in the midst of that run, to go back to the comment on some of the floor spacing, IU was shooting it really well. He had a great drive, finished around Liam Robbins at the basket.
That was great.
And just really was one of a number of drives that he had where just kind of put his head down and tried to get to the rim. And overall, we talked about the 4 turnovers, but he had 6 assists. I think 4 of those came in the second half, 4 rebounds, guarded Marcus Carr for the majority of the game. And the only shots he missed were 3-pointers. He was 0 of 3 from 3-point range, but 4 of 4 on twos and 2 of 2 from the free throw line. Short of trying to, after he slipped toward the end of the game, no one taking a timeout and instead of letting him try to roll the ball to someone. Other than that, I thought his play was really good. And he was a guy that, again, similar to what we talked about with Trayce, really came out of the gate and just looked like he was ready to play. And you felt like he was going to have a big game at some point. I thought it was one of his better all-around efforts, even though he didn't shoot the ball well from deep, but I thought was selective in when he drove the ball, but was aggressive at the same time. Jerod, you look like you're getting ready to talk, so jump in.
Well, the other thing I want to say about Rob is, and he was better overall offensively despite the turnovers. And that drive was great. The thing, you watch him, he creates space all the time. His little hesitation moves getting into the lane. You see, I must find myself like 10 times thinking, man, if he was confident in a little mid-range game, he's always got space for shots.
There were at least 5 chances tonight.
Yes, and you'll see him get in there and create space, and then he passes out of it. And it's like, what's the point? I mean, yes, there's a point to getting into the teeth of the defense, and you can create shots that way. But then he'll uncork a drive where, I mean, dare I say, for that one moment, that one drive, right? He looked like Isaiah with the way that he glided through there and the finger roll layup. That was an Isaiah Thomas play, right? Now, I'm not saying he can do that all the time. He can,
it was beautiful.
Obviously. It was beautiful. No, it was beautiful. And he will show this ability to score at the rim at times. And you're like, where is that other times? Because it'll disappear for 2 or 3 games. It's not physical and it's not skill. It's all mental. And, Arch there, I was looking at some of the comments on Twitter from Archie, and I guess, he had a conversation with Rob about just go play. I don't care if you go 0 for 10, just go play. And that's the thing. And I think that's why IU fans still hold out some hope for him, because you see the ability and the skill is there at times. So it's like those plays are there. If you could ever unlock it mentally to be aggressive and be confident, there's a really good player in there. And you see the flashes of it, but then you also see the indecision, the hesitation where he gets into the lane with these opportunities to do something with it, and then he just wants to quickly pass it back out.
Yeah.
It's the frustration of watching him, because there's something better there, and you've seen it at times, but not often enough, obviously.
Sorry, the problem, before you get off on anything else, the problem with those drives where he creates space is oftentimes he looks to pass to guys who are more covered than he is.
Yes.
Like I noticed that a lot tonight, is that he'd have 3 feet with which he could shoot a floater easily, or, a pull up or whatever, and create that by doing that drive in hard and then kind of switch back. And then he doesn't even look at the hoop. He holds the ball and immediately looks to the wing or the opposite side or behind him. And those guys have defenders on him, and it's sometimes he's fitting passes into tight windows and it leads to turnovers. And so it's the kind of thing where you've got to say, Rob, shoot the ball. At some point you got to shoot the ball when you're there and you've got that much space. You're not going to get that much more space. And so it is frustrating to see that happen from time to time. And I do think that he started off confident. I think Andy was completely right. He started off very confident tonight. He had sort of an air about him early that he was going to be aggressive. And I think that he's got to be able to bottle that. And we've been saying that for 3 years, though, that he's got to be able to do that and be able to repeat that. And so, not to expect it, but when it happens, you see a really good player who has a lot of potential. I actually thought he was much better offensively than defensively tonight. And,
definitely.
And so, but the thing you're supposed to be able to rely on him for is his defense. So you never know what you're going to get with him, but you take it when you can.
Yeah. And to be clear, like, I'm not saying that you should hold out hope that it's going to change, because we now have almost 3 years of essentially the same statistical profile every year of a guy who is just below average in offensive efficiency, pretty similar shooting numbers. Like, at this point, if we see it, we'll believe it and we'll get excited about it. But man, he'd still uncork some of these plays sometimes where you're like, it's in there. Just need to see it more. And Andy, the only other moment that I wanted to point out, on a negative side, Indiana gave up 13 offensive rebounds tonight, and there were a few possessions late in the second half when Indiana's, trying to close this out, trying to take a 6-point lead to an 8-point lead or an 8-point lead to a 10-point lead, and they would give up like 3 offensive rebounds on a possession, and then Minnesota just didn't score. And so that's where, again,
or they fouled them. That was
yes. Part of this win tonight was that Minnesota just wasn't good enough to come into Assembly Hall and take it, but there were opportunities where Indiana kind of tried to give it to them. And so those kinds of plays, they didn't come back to bite Indiana, but they have in other games. And that's just the kind of thing, at some point you just got to secure a rebound on the, on the second or third shot. And they didn't. Fortunately, Minnesota wasn't able to do it, but those were plays that if Indiana had somehow lost this game, we'd be looking back at, it's like, dude, the 50-50 ball is right there. You got to get those.
They blew a bunch of 50-50 balls that they had a chance to get to in this one. And you're absolutely right, Jerod.
Yeah, it feels like there's always a handful of plays, and I jotted a few of these down, where they've got the momentum, they've got the ball, and then they just, like the one, Al steps on the sideline, although they didn't have a great angle of it. I don't know whether he really did or didn't, but it was, some kind of key moments in there where you can either start to pile on or really put the nail in the coffin and just not there. Like there was the one, Minnesota misses 2 free throws. It ends up in a jump ball, but IU doesn't box out and get the rebound. Nobody gets that. So you had little plays like that, but then on the flip side, there was another play I wrote down, Jerome Hunter. IU's up 65-57. He kind of gets in, pokes the rebound away, maintains possession for IU as an offensive rebound, and Trayce gets fouled and extends the lead to 10 coming out of the under 4 timeout. So they made a few of those plays, but yeah, it just felt like there was continue to be a number of times where you've got a chance to really extend a run or do things like that where they just can't quite come up with it. So there was certainly enough in this game to kind of not like as much as you're happy that they won the game. What I want to bring up Al here. There was a couple plays. He really struggled defensively.
Yes,
and I know Jerod has strong opinions on him bringing the ball up to end the half. That is not the play that I was gonna say. But as IU made a couple of these runs and they fell behind at the beginning of the second half, after those 2 baskets from Trayce that we mentioned earlier, Al hits a 3, I believe, from the corner, and then right after that was the 2 Jerome Hunter threes. As Trayce tied the game up at 55 and they went on that big run, Al hits the first of back-to-back threes with him and Armand. So he did make some timely shots a little bit in the way that we talked about with Trayce, but there were other times when he really was, out of control going to the basket and really struggled defensively. And so it was just kind of while the shots were timely and it's easy to remember those things, and he ended up with a really strong statistical line. 16 points, was 5 of 6 from the floor, and had but 2 assists, 4 turnovers. It was just kind of a mixed bag from Al. So there were timely shots mixed in there, but there were also kind of similar to what we were just talking about overall with the game, some things that kind of make you scratch your head a little bit about his performance as well.
Here's what I'll say about Al. He was a net positive tonight. If you get 16 points from Al Durham, and he's 5 of 6 from the field, knocks down some threes, and 12 of those points are in the second half, and he hits 4 big free throws to close out a game. Like, if you can't win with that contribution from Al Durham, then you don't have him on the court, because that's a good game from Al. That's him doing what he does best, right? And we've got to put players in position to succeed. What does Al not do well? Well, we know that he struggles as a defender. Okay, he's going to have to play that half of the court, and you're going to give some up. That's why he needs to score 14, 15, 16 points to be a net positive. Here's what Al doesn't do well. Lead the offense. What have we done now? Two halftimes in a row, right before halftime, and at other times too. In the Ohio State game, we just gave away 2 possessions because we had Al leading the offense. This game, same thing. I don't see this as much, Al, we have the ball with 8 seconds left, and he just dribbles around and doesn't shoot the ball. Now, do you blame him some for that, for lack of awareness? Absolutely. He should realize that he needs to put up a shot. But you know who's more to blame for that? Archie Miller, for putting him in a position where he hasn't shown that he's successful. Al's a catch-and-shoot guy, and he attacks closeouts, and he makes free throws at the ends of games. That's what he does well. Give the ball to Armand. Give the ball to Rob. Put Christian Lander in there. They are better at leading the offense. We are just giving away
screens.
Yes, we are just giving away possessions at the end of the half, and I don't understand it. It didn't come back to bite us in this game, But again, some of those things at the margins, this is why we're losing some close games. So, for all the warts that Al had on his game tonight, he did what you need him to do. but there were times that he's put in a position to not succeed. And I would like to ask Archie, why he continues to do that. I don't know. It's one of those things, like if it doesn't work, like you can say like he's a senior, he should know to shoot, all that stuff. Al is actually one of the least aware players on our team. He doesn't have like a real natural awareness. That's why I say he's good at catch and shoot. He's good at stuff where he can attack really without thinking. But him leading the offense as the primary ball handler just doesn't work that well. Let's stop doing it. Put him in a position to succeed.
Archie, stop. You're hurting Jerod.
No, you're hurting Al. And that hurts Jerod.
You know what I'll say about Al that I have to give him credit for is in the last couple of wins, he's really stepped up the end and hit free throws that were not being made earlier in the year by anybody. So you have a guy now, and it didn't feel like this for the last couple of years. You have a guy now who late when you're facing a press and you have a lead, you just give the ball to and let him get fouled. It was a crapshoot the last few years for Indiana for that. And Al is, and Armand Franklin's emerging as a guy who can do that as well, to give him credit. But yeah, Al has a very limited skill set. He can create some things offensively off the wing, off a pass and coming off screens. He can hit shots and he can make free throws. Those are the things Al does.
He's good at the things he's good at and bad at the things he's
not going to take the ball from 25 feet out in the dead middle of the floor and create something. He might do it once in a while, but he's not going to do it consistently. And so I agree with you. I don't understand why he's the guy who brings the ball up late. I really don't get that. I don't get why he's ever the guy initiating the offense. I mean, sometimes if there's foul trouble or something and you're forced into it, sure. But I mean, you have Armand, you have Rob Phinisee, and you have Christian Lander who can all do it better. Christian Lander may not be a star yet, but he can do it. Armand Franklin may not be a true point guard, but he can do it better than Al, and Rob has his warts, but he does it better than Al too.
And their job would be made easier by having Al spotting up to create space and potentially knock down
there
shots.
You go.
So I don't mean it as a knock on Al. Yeah. Let him do the stuff he's good at.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. All right, let's go inside the numbers. Talk about a few of the stats here. Turnovers and points off turnovers was beaten into the ground quite a bit on the broadcast. We talked a little bit about IU's turnovers, but Minnesota got 25 points off of those. I think it was 13-0 maybe at halftime. I want to say points off turnovers. Yeah. So that's obviously a question mark. You look at the rebounding. Minnesota did get those 13 offensive rebounds, but IU rebounded almost half of its own misses. They had 10 offensive rebounds to 11 defensive rebounds for Minnesota. Assist numbers heavily favored IU. Minnesota only had 6 assists on the night, although you don't have to pass to somebody when you're just driving around.
Yeah, they had a lot of one-on-one guard play.
Would be defenders. But
dude, I have a question, guys. Does the final rebound margin surprise you? Because Minnesota is getting so many offensive rebounds, that surprised me. That we beat them, IU 34-24, beat them by 10. It just seemed like they dominated. And to look at it that way, the two things Archie Miller said coming into the year that Indiana was going to struggle with was turnovers and rebounding. Well, they got crushed in the turnover battle, but they won the rebounding battle. And it seems like that may have been what, part of the difference in the game.
Yeah, I guess in retrospect, when you think that how well IU shot, there just weren't that many of IU's misses to rebound. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised it was as wide as it was, just because it felt like IU gave up a lot of offensive rebounds. IU ends up with 15 assists compared to the 6 from Minnesota, so 15 assists on 26 makes. The second half, that number was a lot better. Bench points, IU 19-5. Probably makes some sense when you figure that Minnesota didn't have Kalsher, and Jerome Hunter scored 16 of the 19. So you got that. And then free throw shooting, 23 of 30 for IU, 76 or almost 77% from the free throw line, and got there often in a game that saw plenty of fouls called. I believe a cool 46 fouls called on this 9 o'clock tip off. So
you got to get your money's worth with those officials, right?
Always a crowd pleaser. Absolutely.
Yeah. My number, Andy, 5 of 7 from 3 in the second half. That's to hit 5 of 7 to go 71% in the second half. Difference in the game, I think. It is.
Hey, Ryan, I don't know if you heard that propelled IU into being the top 100 in 3-point shooting.
Yeah, Crimson Cast had that to say.
Yeah.
They
okay.
confirmed that. Confirmed, rumors that were floating around out there.
Yes.
Jerod, any numbers stand out to you?
Yeah, look, a couple. The first one is bad. 1 block, 2 steals. You guys are probably sick of me every game talking about the block and steal numbers as indicators of IU's defense. I'm sorry, seems to be a pretty straight line between when Indiana's playing good defense, they're blocking shots, they're getting steals, they're getting deflections, all that stuff. And here tonight, in what I thought was a very poor defensive performance, no blocks, or 1 block, 2 steals, just not as active. And it's interesting, I had a conversation with someone today in our private community, like, why is Indiana so good against Iowa, this elite offense, but then a team like Minnesota gives us trouble? It's really simple. Iowa doesn't have guys that straight line drive you. They're incredibly efficient shooters, but they get a lot of that with ball movement through passing. And the pack line is really good at rotating and being able to be there. And especially when CJ Frederick's gone, then you can double and get back to shooters. Minnesota is going to straight line drive you. Now, the pack line is designed to help take some of that away, but when Indiana's guards aren't taking those drives away, now everybody's got to rotate, it messes the entire defense up. So that's why Indiana struggles with teams like Minnesota, with teams like Nebraska that aren't that good offensively, but the style that they play, if we're not locked in and can't control the dribblers at the point of attack, it messes everything up. So that's why there's that defense, and that's what we saw tonight. And, and that's why teams like Ohio State and Michigan that can do that really give us big time problems. So that needs to get cleaned up. The other thing that I want to say numbers wise on a positive note, because, I think I've probably been relatively negative overall toward Archie in some of the things I've said tonight, because there were a few things that, kind of annoyed me while I'm watching the game. But I think he needs to get some credit for the shooting numbers, based on some of the things that you're seeing him say in the post game. I think this team does play tight sometimes. And if he's realized that and has had some conversations with guys to help relax them a little bit and start to give them some confidence, that's really big. And the team played like that tonight. They turned the ball over, as we said, but they played a little bit less afraid. We criticize Archie when it doesn't happen. So without really knowing exactly what was said or being there in practice, I'm going to give him some credit for that, because for whatever reason, again, it was not a very good performance overall, but that important element of the game, shooting, this team is coming around. And if that's in part because of him loosening the reins a little bit, I think that's really important for this team down the stretch. And so I do credit him for that, and for some of the things they did offensively tonight, running the play for Jerome Hunter to get him open for one of those threes. That's the kind of stuff I feel like we need to be doing more. And hopefully he's, kind of realizing that and then loosening the reins on it a little bit.
I want to circle back to your point on blocks and steals, Jerod, which was interesting because there were only 2 steals. They came from Christian Lander and Jerome Hunter, oddly enough, and the 1 block came from Rob Phinisee, which, again, none of those things do you expect. But Trayce Jackson-Davis and Rayce Thompson combined 0 blocks, 0 steals. And one thing that was noticeably absent from those 2 tonight was any sense of rim protection at all. And so when those guys aren't altering shots, you can get beat on a drive if you got a big guy back there altering shots. It makes the guard's job a lot easier. And just nothing from those guys tonight. You saw Rayce a couple times when guys would drive, he was reaching down to try and go for the ball, and not trying to go up and affect shots. And I thought that was pretty glaring tonight and needs to be something they refocus on. Because early in the year, you'd see times where guys couldn't drive into those guys because they'd be there waiting to not necessarily block a shot, but get in the way. And I just think that makes the defense. I mean, it's just a fact that if you have guys back there who alter shots, it makes it so much easier to play defense.
There were a couple times on a few drives that Robbins basically just walled his guy off and really opened up a clear path to the basket, which I guess when you're 7 feet tall and that big, you can do that. But yeah, they got caught on the backside of him a couple times and nobody could really get over to help. That certainly doesn't explain all of them. It's interesting to look, and then we'll break after this. I had the same impressions of the defense not being very good. And then you look up at the end of the game and Minnesota shot 40% from the floor. And part of that aided by the fact they were 4 of 20 on threes and 0 of 9 in the second half. And that was, again, kind of going back to that. I thought during the stretch that IU started to break out, it almost seemed like Minnesota wanted to turn it into a 3-point shooting contest after IU hit a couple and they had guys pulling the trigger on some of those. It just didn't make a ton of sense, but it's kind of odd. I think the defensive numbers from a a statistical perspective, not necessarily points per possession, because I think Minnesota was at like 1.1 or somewhere around there. But I think the just kind of raw shooting numbers don't really tell the story of how much IU struggled defensively in this one. But all right, so we are going to take our final break of the evening. And so when we come back, we're going to hand out our game balls, and then we'll look ahead to IU's next opponent, and then it'll be time for last call. That's all next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 7,000 of your fellow IU fans have already subscribed. You can also text IU to 66866 to subscribe to the newsletter. Again, that's IU to 66866. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Jerod Morris and Ryan Phillips, and we are breaking down Indiana's 82-72 victory over Minnesota. And now it's time to hand out our game balls. Jerod, I'll throw this to you first. Who gets yours?
Game ball to my electricity for sticking on here for a full hour.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx
I know.
it.
It's a ticking time bomb. It's a tough one because I certainly think that you could give it to Jerome Hunter. I won't argue with anybody who does, but I'm going to give my game ball to Trayce Jackson-Davis. Defensively, I don't think he was very good, but I think the tone he set early offensively was really important. And I think some of the buckets that he hit in the second half were also really important. And I think if there was, if you'd asked me kind of coming into this game, like what is the most important thing that you can see in this game that will be good for Indiana going down the stretch, it's Trayce Jackson-Davis getting his confidence back and coming out and starting out a game well. And so I think the fact that he did that, when kind of challenged by his coach and everybody, is a good sign about where his mentality is at, and a good sign for him, kind of as the leader of this team. Whether he's the vocal leader or not, I don't know, but his energy is certainly what leads this team. And so I thought that was really important for Indiana. And he played a ton of minutes, 33, 20 points, 10 rebounds. Sometimes we take those numbers for granted, but I thought he offensively, he really earned those numbers tonight. We need more from him defensively, but this was an offensive game. And I thought he really led Indiana's offense from the tip. So he gets my game ball.
Ryan, what about you?
I got Jerome Hunter for 16 points in 19 minutes, and I thought his shots came at really key times. Now, look, if you're talking about the whole game and who was the better player, it's Trayce Jackson-Davis, so I wouldn't argue with Jerod's selection. But I think that Hunter's points came at really key spots, especially late where he had that dunk. I thought the three-point play he had in the first half to give us a three-point lead was really big. And I just thought he played big in big spots. I think that's why he played a lot in the second half. So, yeah, I got to say Jerome, just because I think that his points, he scored 16 points. I thought they were all very key to the win.
Should have known you guys would do this to me and leave me to break the tie. I should have just answered on my own initially and moved on from there. So, yeah, I mean, I think those to me are really the two guys in the running. I'm going to give it to Trayce. In a game that I use guards struggled and were outscored by a somewhat wide margin. He pretty much played the entire Minnesota front court to a stalemate. He had 20 and 10, and among their, I think, 4 front court players who actually played in the game, I believe they had 23. And so I'll give him a decent amount of credit for that, because I think he, as you said, Jerod, made timely shots, made hustle plays, ran the floor as well as he has in any game that I can recall this season. And really brought a good mentality from the get-go. And I credit the coaching staff for, getting that play to him to really get him started. But I thought he really set the tone early. So I'll go with Trayce. No issue, kind of as you guys said. I think those were the two clear-cut choices. So I'll go with him. All right. Now maybe we can rectify this situation when we hand out. Coach Robert's Real Hustle Award. And the Mike Roberts Real Hustle Award presented by Evansville Security Services. In basketball, good defense requires your help to be in the right place at the right time. Certainly wish that would have been the case tonight. And the same principle applies in life as well, especially when it comes to protecting your business or loved ones. This is where Evansville Security Services steps in, like Armand Franklin stepping in to take a charge against an oncoming offense player, which I don't believe anyone did tonight, although there was a egregious charge toward the end of the Kentucky Vanderbilt game where a guy stepped in, but I'll save that sidebar for a time.
Sally may not want us equating Evansville Security Services with Indiana's defense tonight, so maybe we should talk about how it's like 3-point shooting somehow.
That's flat out offensive, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Evansville
all right.
Security Services.
All right, we'll turn this. If you look at the stats, though, it's good. Evansville Security Services provides off-duty police officers to businesses and individuals throughout Indiana, and you can choose between uniformed or non-uniformed officers. In addition, Evansville Security Services offers an accident reconstructionist who can go all over the state. You can count on the folks at ESS to conduct themselves in a professional manner at all times, and all of their off-duty officers are equipped with the industry's best equipment. And here's the best part. With an off-duty cop on the job, your security officer won't have to waste time calling 911 and then wait because they're already there. Go to evansvillesecurityservices.com to learn more. That's evansvillesecurityservices.com or call 812-214-1132. Remember, prevention cannot be measured. Let Evansville Security Services help you prevent a bad outcome today. All right, Jerod, who you got for the Coach Roberts Real Hustle Award tonight?
So I saved this for Jerome Hunter, actually. And look, all credit to him for the shots. Actually, I think I want to give this to Stephen Bardo because he was really hustling in the first half. Try and convince everyone that this was high-level basketball.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like he had a quota for how many times he had to use that exact phrase. I think he said it at one point like 5 times in about a minute and a half. This was really high-level basketball as both teams just kind of threw up.
Yeah, he wanted to see if he had eligibility
left.
Yeah, he wanted to see if he had eligibility left. He was having so much fun. He just wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, so kudos to Stephen Bardo for that. No, I'm giving it to Jerome Hunter because as important as the shooting was, and actually Stephen Bardo did point this out during the game, but that play where Jerome got called for the flagrant foul, there was a stupid call. It was not a flagrant foul, but what it was a tough play from a guy who wasn't going to back down and let someone else take his space. And at times, this is a team that lets guys kind of take their space a little bit, move them out of the way. Jerome has a little bit of that FU attitude to him, and he's not going to let guys do that. And he's shown that he'll get on the floor and get after loose balls. And so I think, this team was challenged this week about the way that they start and about their toughness. And, I thought Trayce did a great job getting Indiana going, and I thought Jerome's mental and physical toughness in this game, his decision-making notwithstanding, but his mental and physical toughness, I think were big. And I think for the 19 minutes he was on the court, I thought he was a real tone setter for Indiana. So he gets my Real Hustle Award. He played hard.
Ryan, what about you?
I'm going to give it to Armand Franklin again for what I think is like the 4th week in a row, it feels like, because he's still battling that injury. And if you look at his stat line, first of all, plus 11 was big, but he played 36 minutes on a bum ankle, scored 11 points, hit all 3 of his threes, hit both free throws late. He had 6 rebounds and 4 assists, and he fouled out. But, he did his best on defense. I think, struggling with that ankle injury. I don't think anybody played well defensively, but I thought he was our best perimeter defender on the night. I thought Rob flashed a little bit, but I think he just got abused by Marcus Carr too much. But I think that Franklin played better than anybody else. He's still playing hurt. It's still obvious when you see him moving on offense that he is not there, but he's still got his feet set on all 3 of those threes, made them. I thought they were huge because they came, a couple of them came in big situations, and he hit his free throws. I just think that what he's doing, how he's toughing this out and still playing 36 minutes a game, I got to give it to Armand for toughing this out. If it's a hustle award.
Well, at the risk of siding with Jerod again, I'm gonna give it to Jerome as well.
Yeah,
I think fair. a couple plays with him. I mentioned the one toward the end when I used up 8, just kind of almost like a nothing play. Trayce misses a shot. Seems like Minnesota has the rebound. Jerome pokes it away. Trayce gets it back and gets fouled. There was another play where Jerome really was. I mean, he's really brings some physicality to the post, which I don't think you would expect. There was one time he had his guy posted. He had the guy backed like underneath the basket. And if somebody had gotten him the ball, he would have just laid it right in. He had posted the guy and pushed him basically to the baseline when he was in there. I think the play in the first half where he got called for the flagrant was kind of a joke. But I just think level of physicality. And those two, he matched up with Williams again later in the game, and they were still going after it. And I just thought he did bring a different level of toughness that I don't know that you might expect from somebody who does a lot of his damage on the perimeter. But I thought he made some decent hustle plays, and wasn't afraid to be physical in the post. And so I'll go with Jerome just because I think he deserves at least some level of recognition based on how well he played overall for the game. It seemed like one of you is going to jump in. No.
Well, I'll say I think that's fair. I voted for him for the game ball, so I couldn't give him real hustle. But he did hustle and he played very well. So I think it's worth giving him, with him walking away with some award here. I think for sure.
One last storyline I wanted to throw out, Andy, is just, a guy that we haven't talked about a lot tonight is Trayce Thompson. And, there was a, kind of a line of dialogue after the second Iowa game when he was terrific, 15 points, 6 boards, played awesome defense on Luka Garza. People were saying, hey, it's possible this is actually our best player, not Trayce Jackson-Davis. And, you look at what Trayce has done since then. That was coming on the heels of 2 straight double-digit games. So he had 3 double-digit games in a row. In the 3 games since then, he's had 7 points, 9 points, 6 points. Has not taken as many shots in any of those games as he did in the previous 3. Did get to the free throw line 10 times tonight. So, he only took 2 field goal attempts, but 10 free throws is important. Only made 6 of them. But just 5 rebounds. He hasn't been quite as good the last few games, and so I'm curious what you guys think. I just think it's fair. We're really praising him when he's playing really well. I don't think the last 3 games have kind of lived up to what we had come to expect during that great stretch of play. Are you concerned? Is it circumstance? Or do you think that it's just where he's playing as well, the numbers just aren't coming?
I'll let Ryan step in first since he's the Trayce Thompson fan club president, I believe.
I've seen Trayce struggle. I have, and I think that he's had 2 stinkers in a row, and just not great games. And he's also, I think the difference is he's really set the bar very high for himself, and so when he has an average game, it feels bad. And I thought there were some things he did tonight that were good. I thought he moved well on defense for part of the night. I just didn't think he protected the rim. But as far as battling for position and stuff, he still gave that effort. Didn't finish as well on offense. Didn't really take the ball and do it. There were a couple chances he had for mid-range jumpers that he passed up. Being maybe a little too unselfish at times. But I think that he could bounce back next week and be just where he was? Yeah, of course. I just think that, it's a long season and guys have stinkers. He's just happened to have 2 that are back to back and maybe not performing to the level he'd want to and not the level that Indiana needs him to. Let's be real. Given how thin they are up front, he's got to be real good every game. And luckily Trayce stepped up tonight, but when he and Trayce are both having off games, it's death to this team. I mean, it really, really is.
Yeah, I thought defensively there were some times early in the I didn't notice this as much in the second half, but IU would start switching everything in late shot clock situations, and he ended up getting out on trying to guard guys on the perimeter. That was probably not the ideal scenario for him. I thought he was active, but it was a little bit odd when Trayce really got going. He wasn't getting post touches where I think they've gone to him at other times, so he wasn't really getting the ball there. And I think for as much as Archie Miller talked about maybe wanting to see a little bit more Jerome Hunter at the 3, they didn't really do that tonight. So the fact that Jerome played so well ended up eating into Trayce's minutes maybe a bit more. I think he ended up playing 25, but
especially late. They didn't close with Trayce.
Yeah, so I think that was part of it. He looked good from the free throw line to start. Was 5 of his first 6, and then went 1 for 4 in a couple possession stretch there. So I'm not overly concerned with it, but yeah, I think they're certainly depending upon the opponent and how much they try to spread IU out, and the kind of guy that Trayce ends up guarding, I think does factor in a little bit to how successful he is on both ends of the floor. What he can do defensively versus and what matchups he might be able to take advantage of in the post. All right, so let's look ahead to what's next for IU and what's next for us. We've got Assembly Call Radio, which is now officially later tonight in the Eastern time zone. So that will be here. I mean, you brought up Bardo earlier, and I don't want to give any more airtime than is absolutely necessary. But the combination of the 9 o'clock or 9:07 tip plus Stephen Bardo plus officials calling 46 fouls is really the kind of trifecta that you do not want to hit very often. And then
I'm sorry,
game-wise,
guys. That really sucks for you guys both. I'll be honest.
quite down.
I usually downplay it because I'm on the West Coast, but that sucks.
Yeah, well, we make do. And then so game-wise, IU plays Michigan State on Saturday at noon. It's at this point kind of a desperate Michigan State team. They got blown out by Iowa. They played Purdue tight last night for a stretch, but couldn't get over the hump and ended up losing by 10. So they're 4-9 in the league now, just desperate. 2 of their 4 wins have come against Nebraska. So, you're going to, while as much as Archie seems to have had Tom Izzo's number a bit, it's the kind of game that scares you because it's a home game that you ought to win, but it's against Michigan State, which is odd to say that it's a game you should win. But that's really what this week has been about for IU. And we'll have a little bit of time to talk through Michigan State on Assembly Call Radio. And so we can probably save most of that for that point. But it's not a great feeling for an IU team that hasn't played all that well, has dropped some home games, to come into a week with 2 home games that you feel like you have to win as you move forward from your NCAA tournament perspective. So more to come on that, but that's at least what's up next for IU. That game, again, is a noon tip because IU can only play at noon or 9 is the big takeaway for me. So you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember to check out our friends at homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code assembly20 at checkout to get 20% off your entire order. All right, guys, it's time for last call. Jerod, I'm going to throw this to you first so that if our luck runs out with your power situation there in Texas, that we'll give you the best chance you can to get in your final thoughts on IU's 82-72 win over Minnesota.
This is a good sign. This is a really good sign that maybe things are turning around down here.
Don't jinx yourself. Do not jinx yourself.
I know. I want to direct my final comments at the chat mob. I've just been kind of checking in on the chat mob tonight. For those of you listening on the podcast, the chat mob is the live YouTube chat that goes along with our show. And I have to say, I'm disappointed by the tone of what I see in there. This is not the chat mob that I have come to know, that we've come to know. I've gotten some comments from people about it. That it's just kind of not quite the same constructive place that it is. We don't expect everybody in the chat mob to be happy when the team doesn't play well. It doesn't mean that you have to blow bubbles and sunshine all the time, but there's a way to be constructive about the team and about the players, but still leave no one to guess that you're supportive of them. And sometimes I see some criticism and just some stupid stuff in there, speculation about dumb stuff. Comments where it almost seems like you're against the players, and that stuff is just dumb. And so if we have to start banning people, if we have to start getting some of that stuff out of there, that's not what this show stands for. And I know, some people have mentioned to us that we've sounded negative on the show at times this year, and we have, because the play hasn't been that good. But I think we always try to come across as being supportive of the program and wanting the best for the program and not talking bad about the people who work their butt off to give us a winning program, which is what everybody's out there doing. And so just a warning that this needs to get better. And if we see this kind of stuff in there in the future, we're just going to start banning people from the chat, because we don't need you in there for this post-game chat. We've got a great group that likes to be constructive, talk about the game, the ups, the downs, the frustrations. That's what the chat mob is for. If you're going to go in there and if you're going to rip on players and not be constructive and make it personal, you're not going to be part of the community that we're building. That's all I have to say. I'm happy about the win. I don't think Indiana played particularly well. They did shoot well. They did some good things offensively that we can build on, and I think that's really important going down the stretch. This was a game Indiana had to win. They won it. We don't take any Big Ten games for granted. Now they need to go do the same thing against Michigan State, and you do that, and you set yourself up, down the stretch now. Even if you can only win one of those final 3 games, you're going to end up feeling pretty good heading into Selection Sunday. So kudos to the team. They did what they needed to do. Now, chat mob, let's do what we need to do, which is be better.
All right. Ryan, last call from you.
Don't upset Jerod, guys. Come on. Archie, stop putting Al in end of half situations. You're hurting Jerod. And chat mob, clean it up. All right? It's coming from Ryan.
Don't make a mockery of what I just said.
I'm not. I'm being serious. Okay. Clean it up. Like,
right.
Seriously, that's not what we've ever been about. We've never been about full negative. And we can get negative if we're doing analysis of things. We don't get negative about people. That there's a difference there. And Jerod, I'm not mocking. I'm seriously not. I'm I looked in there earlier and I stopped looking because it was distracting me because I was getting upset. We do not knock these people. We can discuss their playing time, they're the time when they're on the court and what they do and all of that. But we do not attack people and we don't denigrate people either. As for the game, there's stuff to build off of here. I think the offense, again, making 3-pointers changes things. We've been saying it for a long time. I mean, everyone in basketball has been saying it for a decade now. You make 3-pointers, it changes the calculus. And Indiana, 7 of 12. Bump that up. Shoot some more. You can probably shoot 20 a game. And will you make 58% as you did today? No. But you can shoot more per game. This team has other opportunities to shoot. And a lot of times the perimeter guys catch the ball and aren't catching it in a shooting position. They're catching it to pass it again. And that's fine if you're running a specific play looking for something. But throughout the normal pace of the offense, you see guys catch it, not ready to shoot. Tonight and some other games recently have shown these guys can shoot if they shoot it confidently. And you cannot shoot it confidently if you're not ready to shoot. So Indiana gets a win tonight that they absolutely needed. Trayce Jackson-Davis showed up early. That's a positive. They shot well. That's a positive. Hit 76.7% of their free throws. Again, a positive. Out-rebounded the opponent. Keep racking up positives here, guys. The thing you have to do, and we say it all the time, and it feels like I always end saying this. It's not about the win. This is a win you had to have. You got it. Good. Feel good about it. But it's not about this win. It's about how you carry it and what you do next. Just like when you beat Iowa, wasn't about the first time, wasn't about beating Iowa. It was about the next game against Rutgers. Can you carry that success through? How do you handle success? This successful night, much better second half, played very well at parts in the second half. How do you carry that forward against a tough Michigan State team? I don't care. They're not good this year, but there's a lot of talent on that team, and they're going to come out ready to play because they often do under Tom Izzo. How do you weather that storm? How do you handle that level of talent? That's the key for this team. It's about sustaining success because you know what you have to do to advance in the NCAA tournament? You got to win a game. And then you got to come back and not be happy that you won that game. You got to win another game and then another game. So how do you handle success? Can you build on it? That's the key for this program, and it has been for a long time, and they haven't shown they can do it. Show you can do it on Saturday. That's the key here, and that's the takeaway for me is some good things happened. Can you build on them? That's it. Build on them against Michigan State. You start to feel better about yourself, and then you hit that brutal stretch of the schedule at the end with some momentum and feeling better about yourself late in the season. That's the key. You got to come out and play well against Michigan State to validate what you did tonight.
Yeah, so for me at this point, maybe this is the bracketology piece of it talking, but for whatever goals may have been set out at the beginning of the season, whether it was a top 4, top 5 finish in the league, those things are not completely out the window, but largely out the window at this point. So at this point, I view each of these games really as how they contribute to IU making the NCAA tournament, because that's really at this point what is going to matter for this season, because I just, to achieve dramatically more than that is probably unrealistic. So in that regard, these two games this week were really important. They were the most winnable games left on the schedule. I think tonight's was a quad 2 game, at least based on how it was setting up when I looked earlier in the week. And then the Michigan State game is oddly enough a quad 3, I believe. And so these are games that you have to win if you want to make the NCAA tournament. And then you get to that last stretch of 3 games, and maybe some are added on, maybe they're not. And you got to find a way to win at least one of those, ideally a couple of them. So to me, tonight's game was really about taking care of business in a game against a team that was a bit undermanned with Gabe Kalsher out, with Liam Robbins a bit hobbled. And there were certainly things to nitpick and to not be happy about. And there were, times as I'm watching guys get driven by that, I'm getting pretty frustrated. But in the end, the team won a game that they had to win. They hopefully carry over some offensive confidence from the way they shot the ball in the second half. And they really looked solid on offense. And yeah, it's easy to say that when the shots go in. We talked earlier in the season about IU's getting good shots. They just can't seem to make them. But more often than not in recent games, it feels like they've knocked them down. They've knocked down some shots in key moments to get wins. And so for me at this point, to kind of tie all that together, They took care of business. They did what they needed to do. At this point, given everything else that's gone on, I'm not going to get too high or too low after any loss, win, whatever. It was fun watching the team play the way they did offensively in the second half of the game tonight, and having so many guys contribute and not feeling like you're reliant on one or two guys to have to make every single play, and you end up with 5 guys in double figures. And for a team that has lacked confidence in a lot of cases, hopefully that gives a number of guys confidence heading into the Michigan State game. And again, that's a game they really need to come through and win. And we'll talk about that more on Sunday after it happens. So that'll do it for tonight's edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to longtime listener Bob Thompson, who produced much of the music you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you tomorrow night, on Thursday night on Assembly Call Radio. Until then,
Take it from me, Jerod. Just keep your elbows in, your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
yeah, apparently I figured that was you doing that was better than me trying to figure out where the drop had gone that I had in here that apparently I never copied over.
That was a hell of an ad lib, Jerod. Did you take improv classes?
That was great. Yeah, I was like, I got
600 in some of these, man.
I got onto this and I was like, well, what are we gonna do? I could have just thrown in the
Coverdale's like a real early James Harden.
I could have thrown that in, but that seemed out of place. So what are you gonna do?
Did he really say that?
Yeah,
He did during one of our rewatches.
Hey, 12:49 a.m. Things happen. What are you gonna do?
2 things real quick. One, someone was asking why Anthony Leal didn't play today, and I thought Joel's answer was correct. This is a bad matchup for Anthony Leal.
Straight, and I
for the same reason that we talked about why the Iowa game is a good matchup defensively for Indiana. That's why Leal is good in that game and not as good in this one.
Yeah, I jumped in on the comments. It's the one thing is straight line drives are the worst thing for him. He's actually okay rotating spot to spot and closing out, but straight line drives are really bad for him. And what did Minnesota? That's all they did was straight line drive. And so that was why. And that was why he's probably he played well against Iowa defensively, because it was all about rotation and all about knowing where you had to be and getting there. And he, made mistakes here and there because he's a freshman, but he played pretty well in those games defensively. But straight line drives with more athletic guards are a problem for him right now. Think he'll get better. He's going to work hard. I know that kid's going to work hard, but yeah, bad matchup.
One other number I want to throw out that I think is important is Trayce Jackson-Davis's usage is now under 30%. And in Big Ten play, it's actually 28.8%. And earlier in the season, it was up at like 31, 32%. Yeah. I think that's good for Indiana to have him use fewer possessions and spread it around, especially when you have guys who are showing that they can make shots. I think ideally for this team, I would like to see Trayce around 27%, even be really efficient and still be the go-to guy, but use a few less possessions and let's turn some of those into 3-point shots. And I think that would be better for the balance of the offense. Some of those wild drives where there's just kind of nothing for him to do, if those can be kicked out or if the ball doesn't even go inside there and put him in a bad position, I think that'll be good for the offense. I think that's part of what we saw tonight. He was more efficient, used fewer possessions, and the ball spread around a little bit more to some of the shooters. So, that's going to probably end up hurting him in the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings, which really rate usage rate highly. But I think it'll be better for Indiana's offense. Trayce is a good player. I don't think he's good enough to warrant 30% usage if Indiana's going to actually be a good competitive team. So I think this is a good trend for Indiana.
Yeah, that was more about the rest of the team than it was him. You have to think,
it's not his fault. It's not about him. Yeah. It's just about how the offense is being run and the flow and all those things. I think we'll be better if it's not so Trayce dominant.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree. Really, when the offense was humming in the second half, it was, almost everybody that was on the floor scored during that stretch. Trayce scored, Al, Armand, Rob had a drive, Jerome scored a couple buckets. You had 5 guys contribute to that run and really and score in that stretch, and felt like the spacing was better and everything looks better when shots go in, and you probably notice things or overlook things that you wouldn't normally overlook when that's happening. But having Hunter out there really being able to stretch the floor, that's what we talked about with him, the whole notion of him potentially playing the 4 after Justin Smith transferred. I mean, that was what, that stretch was kind of what that was about. And you at least had, Armand had hit some shots. Al had hit a couple big ones at that point. Jerome had hit a couple. And Phinisee, while he didn't shoot well from three tonight, has shown ability to be a catch and shoot guy. So at that point, you have Trayce surrounded by other guys where he doesn't feel like he has to shoulder the whole load, nor does the defense believe that every single possession is going to run directly through him in the post.
By the way, Christian Lander, I did look back. I think that's 4 out of his last 5 threes have been air balls. So it's like, Christian, just get in the gym this summer, man. Just get in the gym with somebody who knows how to shoot. Just get in the gym with somebody. And he's going to hit one off of a fast break where he pulls up and pops it and it'll go in, but he won't hit him consistently until he fixes his footwork. I mean, it's really glaringly obvious. I mean, we talked about it in his scouting report. It's just glaringly obvious that it's like your whole momentum is going this way and you're shooting this way. Like, it's just, but I love Christian's future. I just think that he needs to sort that out pretty quickly, because if he doesn't fix his footwork next year, it's not going to get better. It's not going to get tremendously better. So, but I thought he played, actually, when he was in there, he played okay tonight. Moving the offense and doing all that stuff, although he didn't get key minutes because they stuck with the veterans most of the night for defensive purposes. I don't know.
For
Jerod,
defensive purposes, and they were not good defensive.
No, they weren't. They weren't.
I mean, might as well play Lander if that's the defense you're going to get.
Yeah.
Most of the night.
Yeah, I was going to jokingly say the same thing about the Leal comment. I was like, yeah, well, he's not going to be able to straight line drives. I'm thinking, well,
at least it's 5 extra fouls, right?
Please list for me the guys who did a good job of that in this game. But anyway, that's neither here.
Yeah, I would still play Leal. Like, I don't think you just put him on the bench and don't play him. I think him not playing is a mistake. I just think that's why he probably didn't play.
Yeah,
I will say, having watched the last couple games back a little bit, I did a little bit of sort of study on the last couple games, and the offense does run better when Leal's in there because there's so much more space to operate, because he's the only guy, and they'll probably start to do this to Armand a little more, but Armand has the ball in his hands a lot. And so he's the only guy when he's standing in the corner on the perimeter, they do not help all the way off of. So it does change the way the offense runs, and it gives you a complete, side of the floor where you're not going to get full help. And if you do, wide open 3 for that guy. Now, Leal, the problem is he doesn't shoot it every time he's open. I know he's a freshman, but he needs to start. When you're open, that's an automatic shot from him every single time. Trey Galloway needs to think about it. But Leal, when he catches it, he needs to shoot it if he's got a couple feet.
Yep.
Last stat of the night. Armand Franklin currently shooting better from 3-point range than Yogi Ferrell ever did. Do you realize Armand Franklin is shooting 45.2% from 3?
I knew he was in the 40s.
44.7 in Big Ten play.
I knew he was in the 40s. I didn't know he was that high.
I didn't realize it was quite that high either. But he's
where's Al at?
Shooter.
He's
getting back up to about his career average now.
Yeah, because he was he's above 50 over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's up to 37.7 now.
Okay.
41.5 in Big Ten play. So he's basically doing what he did last year.
So if he and Armand have their feet set and they shoot, I feel like it's going in every time. And I feel like it's a good shot if they're open.
Shoot more, baby. 23 is a game. We should be shooting 20 a game.
Again, they got to catch it ready to shoot, though. I think they've been so conditioned out of that there are times in the beginning where Al was wide open in the corner, caught the ball around his waist, and didn't even square. And I just think they're conditioned not to shoot it.
Andy is so ready to close this down and get to bed.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I am. But
I don't start work till noon tomorrow, and it's only 10 here. So, I'm just cut me off.
All right.
Cut me off.
All right.
Jerod, stay warm, buddy.
Electricity, baby. It's working.
Charge everything now.
Yeah, everything's been charging. I was preparing for this to go off a long time ago. So
how long has it been on now?
A couple hours.
It's good.
It's a good sign.
You said you've been 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off.
Yeah, it's extended out to about an hour, but now maybe it's extending out a little bit more. So.
And is your water okay and all that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, that's good. Fortunately, knock on wood. I mean, it has been.
Yeah. All right. Stay warm down there. Anybody else in Texas or anywhere getting hit with a cold snap, stay warm.
Yeah, agreed.
All
You
right.
can all just move out here.
San Diego.
Yeah.
It's sounding pretty good. And I haven't seen my grass in over a week. We've probably gotten over a foot of snow here over a couple different snowfalls. It's tremendous.
Oh, my
and
friends
yet
in
society
Milwaukee.
continues on. And in Dallas, we have a couple freezing days and 3 or 4 inches of snow, and life is over.
My friends in Milwaukee are all like, hey, are there apartments available in your building? Like, it's really bad. They've been below feels like below zero for like almost 3 weeks or something like that, on and off. And they're just like, I think my last winter there was like this, and it was what forced me to move back to San Diego. I was like, I'm done. I can't. So I feel for everybody dealing with that right now.
Yep.
All right. Well,
All
thanks,
right, I'm gonna
everybody.
let-
We'll be back tomorrow night, later tonight, depending upon your perspective.
Are you hosting, Andy?
I think Coach is
Coaches.
hosting, and I'm going to be on, and Tyler.
You are
from
going to be on.
Inside the Hall is going to do it.
Oh,
I
I
gotta
can.
miss-
I'm free to go. Do we want to do 4?
It doesn't matter. I was being nice and giving you the night off when we were emailing about stuff today.
I'll take it.
I don't know. We did have someone email us who binge listened to all the shows, and his
That
first
was
comment
great.
was, "Wow, that was a lot of
That was
Ryan."
a lot of Ryan. And do you see my email back? I'm like, yeah, no, that is a lot of me.
Yeah.
in
That
a
was
short
Chris.
period of
That was
time.
Chris. He said he
Yeah.
like binge listened to everything to catch up.
Just doing the Lord's work out there. I'm not really sure what
All
what
right.
would compel someone to do that. I don't know. We can email about it tomorrow. We'll figure it out tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I can go to dinner with my parents tomorrow if that's if we're done. But yeah,
that's
email,
fine.
let us know.
Okay.
Cool, guys.
All right, sounds good.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Later.
Jerod, I'll load the file up because I think it's saved. So I'll do that if that's easier for you to do stuff later. So
Yeah.
all right, cool. Thanks,
See y'all.
fellas. Thanks,
Later,
all.
guys.
See you guys tomorrow.